Hello everyone, back with me again, Dennis Wang in Frozen Sonic Mini 8K in-depth test and review part 2. And as you guys could see here, I have printed a lot of models here to show the print result on Sonic Mini 8K, and I will compare them to print from Mini 4K with and without antialiasing. All printed with Frozen Aqua Gray 4K resin with layer height 0.03 millimeters. And most of them are the usual models that I use for resin 3D printer review, and some extra model that been requested by viewers to test print on Sonic Mini 8K, and I will just straight up point out the differences that I could spot so the video duration won't be too long, hopefully. Now let's check the first test print, the stability torture test. And the first print is showing out a very good result. No wobble lines and no bad print lines. And somehow on the second test print, I have a bad print lines all over the printers. And if you watch the part 1 video, I have already solved the bad print lines problem and the compression. And this is the very last test. This is the x-axis and this is the y-axis, and everything is print looking good. And look over here, on the right is from Mini 4K and on the left is Mini 8K. And if you pay attention to the vertical lines here, which are very noticeable on Mini 4K, on Mini 8K, it's very hard to spot the vertical lines, and this could because of the pixels are more dense or they are aligned more consistent compared to Mini 4K pixels. Now for the antialiasing test print, this is the first model, antialiasing off. And if you notice the print lines, this is because I print the model before I troubleshoot the printer, and I'm too lazy to reprint this antialiasing test model. This is from Sonic Mini 8K, and let's compare it to Sonic Mini 4K. The voxel on Sonic Mini 8K is very small and almost smooth compared to the very noticeable voxel on Mini 4K. And this is antialiasing too. The voxel is gone, I would say. Yes, it's gone. Very smooth, almost like the result from Image Blur 2. This is antialiasing 4. The voxel is showing up again, but still very faint. This is antialiasing 2, grayscale 2. Yes, I could see the voxel becomes very noticeable again. And at the back, yep, much more noticeable compared to the previous antialiasing settings. This is antialiasing 2, grayscale 4. Yep, become way much more noticeable for the voxel lines on this antialiasing settings. And this is antialiasing 2, image blur 2. Now let's compare it. On the right is from Mini 4K, antialiasing on image blur 2. You could see the voxel at the center here, still still much more noticeable on Mini 4K. Yep, I could still see the faint voxel lines on Mini 4K image blur 2, and very smooth on Sonic Mini 8K. And this is antialiasing 2, image blur 4, for your reference. This model here is sliced using lychee, and because I checked the newest update, they said that the antialiasing should have worked much better. And this is the first one, antialiasing off. This is antialiasing 2 on lychee. I do not see much different compared to the antialiasing off. Let's have it side by side here. Yep, no difference. This is antialiasing 4 on lychee. Still no difference in quality. Antialiasing 8. Still no changes at all to the voxel line. And this is Antialiasing 16. Yeah, no changes at all. Let's have it side by side. On the left is Antialiasing 0 and on the right is Antialiasing 16 on Lychee. Yep, no difference on the voxel line at all. Now both of this ring here is print with Sonic Mini 8K, on the left without antialiasing and on the right with antialiasing. And here as comparison with Mini 4K, there's a huge difference for the voxel here. And for comparison with antialiasing, I could still see a very faint voxel here, a little area with voxel around here. Now for Sergeant Silus, both print on Sonic Mini 8K without antialiasing and with antialiasing. Very clear difference. Now let's have a close-up look at the helmet details here. It is a very visible and pronounced detail of helmet scratch on without antialiasing, and the scratch is kind of gone here on print with antialiasing. Other than that, I would say both of the details are pretty much equal. And here Sergeant Silus, on the left print with Mini 8K and on the right Mini 4K. The voxel is very smooth on the edges compared to Mini 4K voxel here. And we have a lot of voxel for the wings here compared to print on Mini 8K. And for the helmet details, I do not see any voxel here on Mini 8K compared to the voxel on Mini 4K helmet. And the details here is kind of gone compared to very visible details here. And for the chainmail, you could see the details are way more pronounced compared on Mini 4K, and the edges of the shoulder armor here on Mini 8K, the details way much more sharp and crisp compared to Mini 4K. And for the armor skirt here, we have a lot of voxel on Mini 4K and no voxel on Mini 8K. A little bit of voxel for the chest here, and I do not see any voxel on Mini 8K print. And on the left, print with Mini 8K, on the right, print with Mini 4K, both with antialiasing. And on Mini 4K, you could see a very faint trace of voxel lines. It is not very smooth compared to Mini 8K for the antialiasing quality. And for the helmet scratch detail here, on Mini 4K, we are losing a lot of details compared to print on Mini 8K. Yes, the same with the chainmail on the shoulder, very pronounced detail compared to on Mini 4K. And also the same with the armor on the shoulder. The edge is very crisp compared to on Mini 4K. And you could see here for the edges of the chest armor, way much more sharp for the edge detail on Mini 8K compared to Mini 4K. I'm skipping smaller Sergeant Silus and go straight to this tiny Sergeant Silus. The height is only 10mm. This is a print request from viewer. On the left, antialiasing off, and on the right, antialiasing on. Both print on Mini 8K. What do you guys think for this 10mm height Sergeant Silus? Now this print here on the right is from Mini 4K and on the left Mini 8K. The most noticeable difference is the voxel on the shield. Both print without antialiasing. The voxel on Mini 4K is very noticeable compared to print on Mini 8K. And this tiny Sergeant Silus print with antialiasing. Very smooth on the shield for Mini 8K, and on Mini 4K I could still see a faint trace of voxel here. For Yinsylim, on the left without antialiasing and on the right with antialiasing, both print on Mini 8K. For the shield here, the only difference that I could see is a very small voxel here. Other than that, I would say both are pretty much equal. And of course, even for the hair, the print without antialiasing, I do not see any trace of voxel. And this Yinsylim, both print without antialiasing, on the right Mini 4K and on the left Mini 8K. We have trace of the voxel lines here. But if you look at the line for the eye here, it is much more pronounced compared to the print on Mini 4K. And overall of the shield surface, it seems much more smooth but still have a very good details. Compared to print on Mini 4K, seems like a jagged edges here. See, it is very smooth and clean on Mini 8K. And for the hairlines, we could see a trace of voxel lines, and it's very clean and smooth on Mini 8K. And the face here is also very smooth on Mini 8K compared to print on Mini 4K. This is a trace of voxel line, and you could see the armor on the shoulder here looks very smooth on Mini 8K and seems quite rough on Mini 4K. And I believe this is the result, the trace of the voxel. And this print here, both with antialiasing on the left Mini 8K and on the right Mini 4K. Here it's very smooth on both print, but if you look around here, the details is way more pronounced on Mini 8K compared to the print on Mini 4K. It is almost like you are overexposed during the print on Mini 4K. But this is definitely because of the 22 micron on Mini 8K. And if you look around here, it looks very sharp for the details on Mini 8K. And on Mini 4K, it's almost like I print this and I overexpose the resin. But I assure you, I do not overexpose my resin settings on Mini 4K because I have tuned to the very optimal settings. But yes, we could see all of the details here is very different. Definitely a win for 22 micron versus 35 micron. And you look here for the hairline, it is very sharp compared to on Mini 4K. And the same goes to the cloak details here. The edges of the cloak details seems much more sharp compared to the print on Mini 4K. It's kind of blurry edges for the details. Now look at this 1/6 scale head sculpt, both print on Mini 8K, and can you guess which one that I print without antialiasing? The left or the right one? If you are guessing the right one, you are right. This is print without antialiasing, but even I holding a macro camera here, I do not see any voxel inside the eyes compared to print on my previous review with the same head sculpt. Very clean all around, no voxel at all. Both print without antialiasing, on the left Mini 8K, on the right Mini 4K. You could still see the voxel line inside the eyes on Mini 4K print. And over here you could see a faint trace of voxel. No voxel at all. And here both print with antialiasing on, and no longer voxel lines here, but we are losing a bit of details here compared to print with Mini 8K. And on this 1/12 scale head sculpt, both print with Sonic Mini 8K on the left without antialiasing, on the right antialiasing on. I could still see some voxel lines here, but I do not see any voxel at all on the side of the head sculpt here on print without antialiasing. Now on the left Mini 8K, on the right Mini 4K, both have voxel here, but there is an additional voxel around here on Mini 4K. And on the side of the head sculpt here, I do not see any voxel lines here, but I can see voxel lines very visible on Mini 4K. Here both print with antialiasing on. Both voxel lines are gone, but I cannot tell the difference. For the side of the head sculpt, voxel on Mini 4K gone, but we are lacking details compared to on Mini 8K. And on this Hetzer tank model, both print on Sonic Mini 8K, on the left antialiasing off, on the right antialiasing on. And I can barely see the artifact lines. It is very hard to spot if I'm not using this macro camera. And even over here you could see a very faint artifact lines. Oh, both angle at 45 degrees. I'm not using any R10 angle at all. And if you guys check my previous video about print angles and antialiasing, you will know what I'm talking about, artifact lines and R10 angle. This is very mind-blowing. The artifact line is very faint. And usually when you apply paint, this line will become very visible the moment you apply paint, but with such a very faint artifact line, I do not think it will show up even after you apply some paint. Barely no difference at all, except for this very faint artifact line. And check the side. Yep, almost no difference at all. And this is what I'm talking about, the artifact line. It is very visible on Mini 4K. See all this weird line here. Compared to print on Mini 8K, almost very smooth. Both print without antialiasing at 45 degrees. And here you could see both print with antialiasing. The artifact lines on Mini 4K become a much smaller artifact lines. I believe this is more like a stepping lines compared to a very smooth surface on Mini 8K. And both print at layer 0.03. And if you look at the edge of the tank bolt here, it is very sharp compared to Mini 4K. And if you look over here, the details are very sharp compared to the details on Mini 4K. Also over here. Now look at this letters detail here. The smallest part here is around 0.1 millimeters. This is without antialiasing, and this is with antialiasing. But I think I will scale it smaller over here. And I could still read the letter with the help of macro lens. Now here, both without antialiasing, and look at the H letter on Mini 8K compared to Mini 4K. Yeah, the letters are almost disappear. And for this extrude letter, the detail is still very good on Mini 8K, and on Mini 4K, I only can see something of a raised details, but I cannot read the letters at all. And look at this raised letter here. The details is very fine and thin, and here it seems quite thicker. Look at the letter L. This is very sharp, and this is kinda blurry. And here, both with antialiasing on, the surface is very smooth on Mini 8K, but the letters details is still way much more sharp compared on Mini 4K. The same with the extrude letters. Yes, I can still make out the letter for Mini 8K print, and it's very blurry here. On Mini 4K, it's kind of blend in all the details, but on Mini 8K, the details is still very sharp. I'm so interested with the lack of artifact lines on this Hetzer tank print, even without antialiasing. So I print these print angle models again. At the top is Mini 8K, and at the bottom is Mini 4K. And here are the lowest angle models. The lack of artifact lines on Mini 8K is very interesting. See, from another angle models, I cannot see any artifact lines on Mini 8K. All the print result is very smooth on each different angle. All is very smooth. And this is very awesome because I think I don't need to calculate for the acton angle again on Mini 8K. I have here a Medusa Medallion. This is a print request from a viewer. On the left, antialiasing off. On the right, antialiasing 2 with image blur 2. And in terms of details, I cannot tell the difference. The only thing I could spot is with these voxel lines here on antialiasing off, and no voxel at antialiasing on. And this is compared to Sonic Mini 4K without antialiasing. I see, and on Mini 8K we have voxel here, no voxel here, but I can see we have some voxel like inside this line here. I could find it on many places over here. And in terms of details, definitely Mini 8K has a very sharp details compared to Mini 4K. And at the side here, we have a very visible voxel, a very faint voxel here. And let's check the back. And over here, both print with antialiasing. Definitely on Mini 8K, the details is way more sharp compared to Mini 4K. And no more voxels on both print. And this is the print request from C27 Minis Terrain. On the left without antialiasing, on the right with antialiasing. What do you guys think for the difference of the facial details? The only thing that I could really spot with naked eye is here have voxel, no voxel over here. Now both print without antialiasing, on the left mini 8K, on the right mini 4K. You could clearly tell that the details for the facial is much more pronounced compared to on mini 4K, and no voxel around here compared to mini 4K, voxel all over the body. On mini 8K, only voxel over here, both print with antialiasing. And for the facial detail, honestly, it's very hard for me to tell the difference. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section. And voxel on mini 4K are all gone. And the same with on mini 8K, the voxel here is also gone. And on this model, both print on Sonic Mini 8K, the left without antialiasing, right with antialiasing. I cannot really tell the difference, and the only thing that I could find is around here we have a slight voxel, and here is smooth. This is compared to mini 4K, both without antialiasing. We are losing details here compared to mini 8K. Details on the belt here much more sharp compared on mini 4K. And I could see some voxel lines on the beard compared to at mini 8K, no voxel at all. And around here, much sharper details compared to mini 4K. And the same with the facial details for the, what is it, a ferret or a squirrel. And over here, a lot of voxel lines compared to mini 8K, only over here. Now, here both print with antialiasing on, no longer voxel. And other than that, the difference of the details quality pretty much the same with the print without antialiasing. No more voxel on the beard on mini 4K. Same over here, much more details on mini 8K compared to mini 4K, both print with antialiasing. Here the voxel is gone, and there's never a voxel from here and on here. And for the chainmail over here, way more pronounced and sharper details compared to mini 4K. And for this 1/6 scale shoes with socks, on the left without antialiasing, on the right with antialiasing, I could clearly see that the details for the socks here sharper compared to with antialiasing. And we have a slight trace of voxel here on without antialiasing, and a lot of the shoe soles. And here, antialiasing on, no voxel lines at all. Now compared to mini 4K, the voxel is very rough. It's quite smooth, the voxel here. A very big voxel. And for the socks detail, yep, definitely this is much sharper. Now on the left mini 8K, on the right mini 4K, both with antialiasing. I could see that the leather texture here is more pronounced compared to on Mini 4K. The same goes with the socks detail, and both not showing any voxels at all. For this 1/3 scale head sculpt on the left Mini 8K, on the right Mini 4K, in terms of the facial details, I would say both are equal. And for the eyebrows, definitely the hairlines here is way more fine and sharp compared on Mini 4K. And for your information, both print without antialiasing, but I do not see any voxel inside the eye here. Compared to Mini 4K, it has voxel lines. Now let's check the dimensional accuracy on this 20mm cube. .02, this is the x-axis. 19.98, and this is the y-axis. If you like all the test print in this video, kindly consider to subscribe to my channel. And if you want to support my channel directly, you could check my Patreon link in video description. And check out these Wiremesh models. This is 0.3 thickness with 0.3 holes, 0.2 and 0.1. And so far from all the printers that I review, only Sony Mini 8K that capable to produce such result. And this is the comparison for Mini 4K. Even on Sonic 4K, it is not able to print as good as the result on Mini 8K. Now check out the holes and thickness of the wire mesh on this 0.1mm compared to the tip of this needle. And here's a comparison with my fingerprint. It is such a fine and small details. I have a viewer that requests me to do Zenithal priming on the figure to show up all the detail. And yes, I have to agree, it is a very good idea. And on my previous print at Mini 4K, I never realized that this forging effect or like hammer effect on armor could be printed so well. And I can only see it now after this Yinsylim print on Mini 8K. Check out all the hammer or the forging effect here. See, it's showing up very sharp for the details. So thank you for the suggestion. Just when I'm about to end recording this part 2 video, I saw someone post on Facebook group, on Phrozen Facebook group, that his print result on Phrozen XP Finder appears flat or lack of details when he print on 0.02 and 0.01 millimeters. So I print this XP Finder on 0.01 millimeters, and this is the result. I have troubleshoot my printer and show you guys how to on the part 1 video. So the only difference that I can think of from his printer and mine is I already replaced the black tape with Kapton tape, because he mentioned in his post that he already tried leveling with more than one piece of paper. Judging from all the comparison, do you guys think Mini 4K is still worth it? And in terms of print details on Mini 8K, does it perform as you guys expected? Let me know in the comment section. And one thing I really like is on hard surface like vehicles or maybe jewelry, I do not see any very visible artifact lines. So I can orient my model however I want without worry for artifact lines. So this is the end of my part 2 video on Frozen Sonic Mini 8K in-depth test and review. See you guys in the next video. Feel free to ask any question in the comment section regarding Sony Mini 8K. Thank you guys. Ciao. Thank you Robert Mrzowski for becoming my patron.